Today we want to dive a little bit further into the X-acto blade and talking about that. And so I have this, which is the most basic X-acto blade that there is, that I know of, And then you can get more and more complicated ones. This one has a nice soft grip. They all fundamentally work the same way. And I'm going to try to speed talk through this because we're going to try to pick up on the back end a little bit more detail. But let's spin you down, and I'm just going to put my head in a weird position. Okay, you can see that. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. So X-acto blades are made up of a couple parts, and we'll take it apart. And you can see that, there's the long tube that interacts, that just kind of slides here, so there's like the body of it. And then there's, technically the grip comes next, which also keys the chuck. Now, this one's threaded, so you gotta pull in, and there's a little slot, and as you screw this in through the handle, it tightens on the flat end of the blade, so you can put all that together. And then you can screw it together, and we're in business. Now, the most important part of an X-acto blade is the cap. Whenever you're not cutting, you should have the cap on, and that way you don't accidentally, cut open your backpack and, or worse, cut open your hand. This one, which is a little bit fancier, works exactly the same way. It just has this plastic grip in the same place, and it has this big fold-out spring load deal so that you can get even more grip, or you can tension it even further down. And the most, oh, come on, yeah. See, that's why I don't like changing the blade on this one, is because it's picky. But one of the most important parts to cutting with an X-acto blade is, well, the blade is the most important part because it does the cutting action. And we can see, if we look at these two, where am I in relationship to, there it is. This one, the silver one with the cap, has a nice crisp point at the end. This isn't necessarily a brand new blade, but it's pretty close to being brand new. It has a nice point and a nice straight beveled cutting edge, whereas if we look at this one, this is a little bit older, and it also looks like this has been burnt a little bit or whatever, but this is rounded. Let's get the other X-acto blade. On the blue handles blade, this has been rounded, and we can see that that straight line is just a little curved at the end, which means that the cuts are going to come out ragged. So we can take this blade off. Now, at the end of this video, your class host, Jonathan Florence, should, or I guess I should say, will be coming around and showing you the specific location in where we dispose of X-acto blades. Just because it's a dull blade doesn't mean that it can't slice things. And so we have a box, which I'll show you in 111, where we put used X-acto blades. You do not throw these in the trash. Let me repeat that just to emphasize. Used X-acto blades do not go in a trash can. They go in a little box, and they get thrown away. I have a big bowl where I keep also my pencil shavings, and that's where I like to throw them away. I don't know why I sifted the pencil shavings. I would never normally do that, but down here, that's what I like to do. And that way, they're just nice and out of the way, and they don't slice open the garbage bag and, or worse, slice open anyone's legs. Now, you're going to want a couple accessories when it comes to cutting with an X-acto blade. Why is there sand across my cutting mat? Kind of wipe that away. Go away, sand. So the very first thing is a cutting mat. You have to have a cutting mat when cutting in the classroom down. Now, you might get away at home with a piece of cardboard or whatnot, and that's fine for at home. But in the classroom, you have to have a cutting mat. This saves the table and saves from scoring into the nice wooden tables. Now, if those tables get scored, you know who sands them? Let me spin it around. I sand them, and I don't want to sand them. So, always put down a cutting mat when you're cutting with an X-acto blade. Let me just emphasize this one more time. If you're cutting in the classroom with the X-acto blade, get a cutting mat. Now, down here in my studio, I have two cutting mats kind of taped together, and that works for me. Then it doesn't hurt to have a drawing utensil. I'm going to use a Sharpie. You should use a pencil so that we can kind of see, you can kind of sketch out what you're looking for. So I have this great lamp shape that I've been working with that I really like. It comes from the back of the building by the dumpster. And let's see, I'm just going to whip that out real quick. And one thing that, even though you're going to be drawing with pencil that you can erase, you always want to draw on the reverse side of the paper. So if you need proper orientation to the shape, you have to think in your head that you're mirrored. And that way, if you do cut inside or outside of the lines a little bit, that way you're not showing the pencil mark, or in my case, the Sharpie mark. It might not be as dramatic for you, but that's still going to give you that crisp, 100% clean look. So, draw my my light here. I'm just going to sketch that out. Now, that's kind of where it would stop, but I think that we should add a little doohickey, make this like really fancy. Okay. So I got some spare lines. So now this does have to be in mirror. So when I cut it out, I'm going to use the other side. Now, one of the things that we've noticed, or I've noticed through a couple teaching this class a little bit, is students tend to do weird things with cutting knives. Proper cutting technique is holding it like a pencil, or however is comfortable close to your pencil. I do this kind of thing where I put it in between these two fingers and then squeeze, mostly because I have some thumb issues, and so that gives me a good amount of control and roll on the yaw axis. But what you definitely aren't doing is you're not stabbing this. In fact, there should be no stabbing at all, ever, with an X-acto blade. So if you're trying to cut like this, like, yeah, you're cutting, but like, man, you're gonna mess that blade up really quickly, and you have no control. There's just no, it does whatever it wants. That's no good. All right, so I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna let the tip rest, and my cutting angle isn't perpendicular. I'm not holding it like vertically against the page. I'm slicing. I'm actually trying to make as much contact between this blade and the paper's surface. So I'm actually coming in at a very low angle of approach, and that way I'm slicing through the fibers of the paper. I'm slicing them open. I'm not ripping them, which will yield me nice even cuts. Now, we can kind of take this, and to start, you just take the tip and you dip in. That's the only time that your blade should ever like really engage in a vertical manner. You just kind of dip in and you start. And then I like to overcut a little bit. We'll get there when we can actually see that a little bit better, but you should always be comfortable in cutting kind of across or away from you, never cut towards you. And so I'm going to turn the paper. Turning the paper is totally fine. Also, starting and stopping a cut whenever you feel like you need to is totally fine. Okay. So I'm just going to keep turning the paper. And I'm following. And one of the advantages that we really can see from an X-acto blade, there's a lot of places where scissors work just as good as X-acto blades. These really tight radiuses, these fine acute angles, that's really where the X-acto blade shines. Now, starting and stopping, right? So I've come around this edge. I'm just going to flick up to make sure that I've cut through all of this. I haven't, and that's all right. You don't actually have to cut through on your first pass. Light cuts that you repeat are sometimes better. Now, generally in the paper that we're using in this project is pretty thin, so you generally don't have to recut something, but there we go, look at that. And we can just take and flick open the cut. Can we see that? Yeah, you guys can see that, right? Yeah, you just take and flick that open, and that's fine. And so you can cut into a cut. Now, I like to take, and if I don't think I'm going to use the negative, I might go about a 16th past. It's kind of difficult to show my old cut, just to make sure that I get through there, especially since I am attacking with a low angle, and so the start, where I'm seeing as the start of the cut, might not actually be a good indicator of where the cut is actually being made through the paper. I'm going to keep chooching along. And something that I should also mention, I'm taking my time and I'm just being slow, and I have that high angle of attack, a very acute angle at the page. Okay. And I'm going to go through again. And if you do need to go through again, that's totally fine. Generally, you can use the tip of the blade to kind of wiggle your way back into that cut. It's not particularly difficult to do. And something that, I meant to mention is that, here I'm kind of starting in the middle of this piece of Bristol, and that's not maybe the best use of the space of this paper. I was really thinking of it as like a demonstrational piece of paper, more than I was thinking of it as like a resource. And so this shape would be way better. It would fill this bottom corner way better, and then save this much larger sheet of paper for bigger and better cuts. Well, maybe not better cuts, but bigger other shapes that I want. And so I'd be utilizing my resource in a smarter fashion. Now, okay, before we get too far in freeing this paper, I might want to do some internal stuff. In fact, I want to do some internal cuts. I want to make this the shape. And I'm going to give that some rhythm up this section by making a couple of them. Yeah, some sweet rhythm. I woke up this morning and I've had put the lime in the coconut stuck in my head. Not sure why, weird song to get stuck in your head, but rhythm is on my mind. So I want to make some positive, negative spaced rhythm in this shape. So I'm just going to sketch that out real quickly so I have a plan that looks a little good. It's a little wobbly in proportions down here. I think I can do better, but I'll make that up in the cut. So I'm going to take where I'm comfortable, and I'm going to cut all these lines in a nice, comfortable format. Oh, I'm going to get that out of Bristol. Come on. There we go. Oops, a little raggedy. Fold that over, just clean that up a little bit. Those are cricket in my studio. Okay, so we got those out of the way. Let's get this shape out of here. Okay. Come on. we go. We got this shape out of there. And this shape really looks best in this direction, right? This side's much dirtier. It's got all my Sharpie lines and whatnot. Where's my cap? There it is. Put this away before I Arya Stark myself. And we have this awesome shape. This has infinite possibilities. It's a pretty sweet shape, if I do say so myself. And so that's the X-acto blade. You can pair this really well with a steel ruler, which we will talk about in a bit. But so some key notes here is whenever not in use, put the cap on. Check the tip off. Whoop, don't drop it. That's really terrible. Okay. Check the tip often to make sure that you're not cutting with a raggedy tip. A raggedy tip leads to a raggedy cut. Turn you guys this way. Cool. Come on. Turn. Straighten. Okay. Never, ever throw the blade into the trash can. Never cut in the classroom without having a cutting mat down beneath you. And don't cut towards you. Change directions often as you need. Always be comfortable while completing a cut. And an acute angle of attack is going to cut much smoother than a very right angular or a very vertical attack. So the lower the blade can get, the more cutting area you have, the smoother it'll go, especially for straight lines. If you have a straight edge, you can backtrack up the blade a little bit, up the handle a little bit, so you have like almost a parallel line of cut, and you'll be slicing through paper in no time. All right, so from here, one half of you, probably, where did we start last week? I forgot. We'll flip a coin for it. But one side is going to hit the ground and get going with their project. The other side is going to hear a bit of a lecture on chapter 1. It's very exciting stuff. Laying that foundation down for strong art practices later. And I'm probably going to repeat this, but cool.